We boast of God through our Lord Jesus Christ, through whom we have now received reconciliation. Good morning, sisters and brothers. Welcome back. Give God thanks and praise for granting us a new day. Today's email is from Sunday, February 8th, same date as today in 2004, 6:01 in the morning. And the title or subject is A Valentine for Grandma. This comes from a devotional that was sent out, not sure if it was every day or every week, from the Chicken Soup Daily Serving. And this is credited to Joseph Walker. It was just a harmless prank, that's all that it was. And it wasn't as though old lady Hayes didn't deserve it. The way she used to scream at us for borrowing a few of her precious raspberries. Like we were stealing gold out of Fort Knox. Well, she had it coming. At last, that's the way it seemed to us as George finished tying the string to the red heart-shaped box. We giggled as Ron added the final touch. 2 plastic roses glued to the lid of the empty Valentine's box. I wonder what will surprise her the most, I asked as George and Albert practiced jerking the box out of reach by yanking on the used kite string we had attached to it. Seeing a box of candy on her step or watching it fly away when she tries to pick it up. We laughed as we watched George make Albert chase the empty box around the dusty garage. For a chubby 10-year-old, Albert did a pretty good imitation of Mrs. Hayes, hunched over, hobble, and her seemingly permanent scowl. And he howled when he picked up a broom and pretended to ride it through the midwinter air while shouting, "I'm old lady Hayes, the driedest up old prune in the West." Ron was the first to notice my dad in the doorway. Within seconds, Ron's anxiety was shared by all but Albert, who, unaware of Dad's presence, continued to swoop around the garage, cackling and screeching all the way, until he came face to belt buckle with our silent observer. For a few moments, the only movement in the suddenly quiet room came from mouths. Albert pulled a face, groping in his mind for some way to conceal the evidence now stacked so neatly against him and us. Dad broke the stillness by walking slowly to the empty candy box lying on the floor at Albert's feet. He picked it up and dangled it by the string, watching it swing incriminatingly back and forth. Then he looked into the eyes of the 6 frightened boys who anxiously watched his every move. And as was his custom, he looked into their hearts as well. It doesn't seem so long ago that I was pulling Valentine's Day pranks myself, he said as he laid the heart-shaped box on the workbench. At first, it was difficult to picture my dignified father pulling the kind of prank we were planning. But then I remembered a picture I had seen of him as a child, with fiery red hair, a freckled face, green eyes, and wearing a tight, impish grin. It was possible, I thought. One Valentine's Day, my cousins and I decided to pull a good one on my Grandma Walker, he continued. Not because we didn't like her. She was the sweetest grandma a boy could ever have, and we loved her. We were just feeling a little devilish and decided to have some fun at her expense. Early in the evening, we snuck up to her doorstep with a can of red paint. Grandma was hard of hearing, so we didn't have to worry about being very quiet. Which was a good thing, because every time we thought about how funny it was going to see Grandma try to pick up a Valentine that was just painted on her doorstep, we couldn't keep from laughing. It didn't take long to finish. It wasn't very artistic, but for a bunch of farm kids and an old woman with poor eyesight, it would do. As soon as we were satisfied with the painting, we kicked the door and ran to hide behind bushes and trees to watch the fun. There was a lot of giggling going on as we waited in the snow for Grandma to open the door. When she finally appeared, she stood in the doorway for a minute, peering into the darkness. Her gray hair pulled back tightly into her usual bun, wiping her hand on her usual white apron. She must have heard the commotion in the bushes because she looked in our direction as she spoke loudly enough for us to hear. "Who would be knocking at my door this hour of the night?" My stomach and cheeks ached from trying to hold back the laughter. Then she looked down at her doorstep. Even from 15 yards away we could see the joy that sparkled in her eyes when she spotted the splash of red at her feet. "Oh, how wonderful!" she exclaimed. "A Valentine for Grandma! And I thought I was going to be forgotten again this year." She bent down to retrieve her prize. This was the moment we had been waiting for, but somehow it wasn't as much fun as we had planned. Confused, Grandma groped at the fresh paint for a moment. She quickly became aware of our prank. Her delight at having been remembered by a sweetheart on Sweetheart's Day was short-lived. She tried to smile. Then, with as much dignity as she could muster, she turned and walked back into her house, absently wiping red paint on her clean white apron. Dad paused for a moment, allowing stillness to once again settle over the cluster of attentive boys. He took a deep breath. "Grandma died later that year," he said. "I never had another chance to give her a real Valentine." He took the candy box from the workbench and handed it to me. Not another word was spoken as he turned and left the garage. Later that night, a red heart-shaped box with 2 plastic roses on it was placed on Mrs. Hayes' front doorstep by 6 giggling boys. We hid behind snow-covered bushes and trees to see how she would react to receiving a full pound of candy and nuts, with no strings attached. A reading from Psalm chapter 34, starting at verse 13. "Who among you delights in life and desires many years to enjoy prosperity? Then keep your tongue from evil and your lips from telling lies. Shun evil and do good. Seek peace and pursue it. The eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are open to their cry. Face of the Lord is turned against those who do evil, to erase all memory of them from the earth." We, every single day, should bow down before our God. He loves us and cares for us and wants what is best for us. And approach the throne of grace and ask for his forgiveness for the sins we committed when we were a youth. A lot of simple, silly pranks and things like that may have hurt somebody. Things we don't think of, like the man in the story, until years later, about how hurtful we can be sometimes and not really intend to. A lot of times we think they are funny. And a lot of people that I'm speaking to may not be Catholic. They may not go to confession or to a priest. But in the words of Jesus, in the prayer that he gave us, we ask our Father to forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. May God bless you, my friends. Have a wonderful day. May there be peace on earth. And should God permit it, may we meet again soon.